Greetings, everyone. This is Umby here, and we're back with week one of the VGC Draft League Season 2. Um, I'm doing something different. Normally, what I do is I give a breakdown separately from the actual match itself, where I then do live commentary as I'm playing. What I want to do this time, and partially because I had some technical issues, is actually go over the replays, which may help save some time, and then kind of go over my thoughts as I recall from the plays that I actually made, and see how that turns out. If it doesn't have as good of a vibe as the live commentary, then I'll go back to that route. But just want to go ahead and give this a try for this week. In which case, we're up against Ryu this time. And this was the rain squad. You see the Pelipper, the Dragonite, the Floatzel sitting right there. One of the teams I was concerned about and rated highly on paper, right? Now this one was a little bit tricky in my head to kind of approach, because obviously I have Gastrodon, which puts a hard stop to the main rain strategies, especially because they have 3 different water type Pokemon on their squad. They're gonna want to bring 2 if they're bringing Pelipper, if they're bringing Rain, they're gonna want to bring like a second water type, right? So that does a lot to stifle some of their damage, and at which point my other Pokemon can operate and pull off their own damage. Now the issue with that is the sole defense that I have against those Pokemon. Because even though I have Tropius as a grass type, being weak to electric means that like Rotom-Wash gets to do neutral damage, so it's not completely free. I just had like general concerns with Ice Spinner from Floatzel too, very likely KOing the Tropius. So a lot of my defense against Rain is hinged onto Gastrodon. So my approach to this matchup was going to be to, put it into place and protect it as best as possible. But I expect my opponent would know that as well, that Gastrodon is something that has to be addressed. So I was expecting, a number of Pokemon to have grass moves, whether that's like Terra Blast, grass on the Floatzel or the Pelipper. Glamora could come along, bringing Energy Ball. I'm soaking Gardevoir. So I wanted to make sure that I was wary of that, because if my opponent plays very well around it, the Gastrodon could be something of a non-factor, at which point I'm very much exposed to the high damage potential of Floatzel. At the same time, I still have to protect myself against Dragonite, in my opinion. Both Dragonite and Tinkaton. Dragonite just for like purely for damage. If it's run like a choice band set, it could off a lot of damage. If I don't like reserve my Goldingo, always has the option of doing like earthquake stuff. Because they do have like they have Rotom, Pelipper, Gardevoir, even Stonejourner could use like Wide Guard to help avoid some of the damage. There's a lot that they can just like pump into my team without too much effort. And then the Tinkaton has some really cool tech options if they're thinking of it. Like outside of the fake out, you can also look at like skill swap, like to take away the good as gold from Goldingo, or even the Storm Drain from Gastrodon, and then reposition so that your Floatzel, your Rotom can actually launch water moves under rain for all your damage, right? So I was thinking about approaching this matchup very carefully. And I was looking at like defensive options, like making a bulky Rotom Heat set with Will-O-Wisp, even bringing like Pikachu in to make sure that I had a fake out user, Mabostiff, so that I could like in the clutch intimidate the Floatzel even under rain. That could help reduce the damage just enough for me, to survive some of the turns. Run it with Assault Vest. But in the end, I decided, you know what? This is week one. Let's do some limit testing. So I went with a more aggressive option, and this is what I came up with. So first thing I want to point out is the Noivern and the Goldingo. One of the primary reasons I had selected that duo, number one, I had selected Goldingo first, but I felt like the Noivern paired pretty well with it, as being one of the faster Tailwind users in the format to go ahead and set it up. But also it has a unique interaction that I can spam Terra Normal Boom Burst while Goldingo is immune to it. And then at the same time, I can spam Make It Rain. So if I have a speed advantage, that's a ton of spread damage that I can get off in one go, and possibly just grab 2 knockouts, without much effort. Now, fortunately for Ryu's team, he's actually kind of pretty well insulated versus that strategy. Because you have the Glamora, you have the Tinkaton to absorb the Boom Burst, and even like if I went Hurricane, it can absorb those. The Tinkaton is immune to Draco Meteor, so I don't have much offense outside of the Goldingo, which isn't going to immediately knock out the Tinkaton, right? And then the Goldingos Make It Rain is going to be resisted by the primary water Pokemon that are are likely being brought to the match, right? But I also brought Rotom Heat. Here's my my second option for AoE damage. It has Choice Specs Discharge. Between Gastrodon, Hippowdon, and Telepathy from Noivern, I'm pretty well insulated, so just go ahead and spam Discharge as well. And while I have the defense of Gastrodon Storm Drain, I'm not too worried about taking water moves. And when you think of that, when you nullify all the water moves, right? They don't really have a lot that can hit the Rotom Heat and take it down quickly. So I'm almost 100% free to just spam Discharge in that scenario, right? Then lastly, I do have Hippowdon and Lycanroc as a the Sand Rush combo. To try and take weather control if it just feels like I can't really handle the Pelipper the way that I want to. This is kind of my backup to just go ahead and negate the weather and then get my Noivern into position to Tailwind or take it out with Draco Meteor, right? Otherwise it's gonna outspeed me. Now some really cool tech options, at least I think so, that I included like last minute, like right before the match started, was Rindo Berry, Gastrodon. So naturally I started with Terra Steel for it, so that it could sit in front of the Dragonite if necessary, but it also makes me resistant to Pelipper's Hurricane, so it makes it very hard to remove from the field. And like I mentioned, it's something that I really want to protect and make sure that like Storm Drain is always active, so they can't get some of their main damage off and they're forced to pivot to these other strategies, which I think I can handle pretty appropriately. On Goldingo, I have White Herb. So I was kind of torn on what item. I didn't want to run like a choice item as much as I wanted Choice Scarf, because if I wanted to spam Discharge, I wanted the option to use Protect. Okay? I also wanted to make sure that Noivern was doing sufficient damage, because its offensive stats are pretty low, not gonna lie. Just has high base powered moves to spam. I was looking at Throat Spray just to pair well with the Boom Burst, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to use Boom Burst immediately. So just for the immediate raw power, I went for Life Orb so that Draco Meteor could benefit as well. Which doesn't leave me like a ton of options for items on Goldingo. I could go with the Leftovers if I really wanted to, or like a Shuka Berry, like expecting Earth Power from Glamora. But I wanted a option that kind of upheld its offense. So I decided on White Herb. It was like between the White Herb and Eject Pack. I just figured White Herb would be better. So when I spam Make It Rain, I'm still back at neutral. I don't have to waste my Terra on Terra Steel to get the power back from Make It Rain. And I don't think it was like the worst option I could pick. Right? Also, I don't know why, like we'll get into it in a moment. I don't know why, but it just made sense. I don't have a logical reasoning for it. I just felt like Salazzle was going to come to this matchup, or had like a high potential to do so. So I opted for Terra Water, just in case they did not go with a rain strategy, and they brought the Salazzle to to use Overheat into it, right? My suspicions were well founded, because lo and behold they brought it. So somehow that last minute change was on the money. I'm proud of myself. Clap, 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 clap. But from there, everything's pretty simple. Like Terra Dragon on the Hippowdon just for additional durability. Make sure that I'm resistant to water and electric moves if they bring the Rotom. The Lycanroc, I actually brought Quick Guard just for like late game scenarios. If I'm stuck versus extreme speed Dragonite, I figure could help out, because not having a stab close combat, even if it goes Terra normal, it's not gonna do it from full health. It's not gonna KO, like just point blank. So I was just concerned about what's going to happen when I get to the end 2v1 or 2v2, I have only a sliver of health left. I'm going to die to the extreme speed. Maybe I can stall out with quick guard and then attack with my other Pokemon. Right. So yeah, that's where my head was at. And as far as my opponent, going into game one, so their lineup is Floatzel, Salazzle, Pelipper, Dragonite, Gardevoir, and Tinkaton. So I mean, we expected Pelipper and Floatzel. Tinkaton and Dragonite are good tech options under a rain team. So I think those four were like fully expected. If not the Floatzel, then very likely the Rotom Wash, but that's the best way that they can kind of get speed controls with the Floatzel. The Salazzle, like I mentioned, I don't know, my spidey senses were tingling. Something, I just thought that they would bring that along. It just makes sense. And then lastly, the Gardevoir. That one, I kind of had an inkling that it might be a Scarf version, but I couldn't fully tell. So like we get into the match. Whoops. Let's turn this music off, why don't we? Okay, so turn one, and just to some background, my opponent was lagging at this point, so some decisions may have been rushed, just to give credence to that. But I decided I'm looking at this on this combo. There's no trace, so that means that there is a telepathy, very likely. I'm not expecting Synchronize to show up on the Gardevoir. It didn't really hit me until later that they might be using Earthquake with telepathy, because I was looking around the team like, what are they using that could benefit from the telepathy? And obviously, answers right in front of my face. It's Earthquake on the Dragonite. Just unfortunately for them, I led to Earthquake immune Pokemon, so it didn't really matter too much. They lead off with the Extreme Speed and the Icy Wind. So I did want to make sure that I scouted out with the Noivern for what they were going to do. I'm going to be faster no matter what, so I can always get the Tailwind off at any point. But I figured, okay, I'm pretty safe with my Rotom. They can't remove it from the field immediately. So I'm just going to go ahead and spam Discharge. And fortunately, even though I don't get like a ton of damage down, I get the paralysis off onto the Dragonite. Now, an important part of this, they don't have to worry about too much, at least, about Intimidate, because Mabostiff, my only Intimidate user, is like kind of a weaker option in general. And they don't really have to worry too much about being flinched, because my only Fake Out user is going to be Pikachu. So it looks like they opted for multi-scale here, because I do barely do any damage with the Discharge. Now, all that being said, I do get pretty good damage down overall. I think they went for like a really bulky set on the Gardevoir, and it's also scarfed. We can tell from the fact that my Rotom is max speed Timid, and is a higher base speed than the Gardevoir. Yet the Icy Wind moves first, so we know this is a Scarf move set. To say, okay, they're locked into Icy Wind. They're not going to be able to remove my Dragonite even here on turn 2. We see that the Extreme Speed's not doing like a ton of Noivern. So it's not like a choice band set, or at least I'm like expecting it's not a choice band set. So they can never remove the Rotom like easily. So I'm free to spam, another Discharge. I make a kind of ballsy play here, where I leave the Noivern in versus the Icy Wind. Barely survive to get the Draco Meteor off in time to get a knockout before Noivern goes down, right? And then get some more chip damage in with Discharge while I can. All right, now we have another paralyzed Pokemon, bring in Goldingo, and they bring in Pelipper. All right, now at this point, I think I'm in a pretty good position, right? Their Gardevoir is really paralyzed. The Gardevoir is paralyzed from the Discharge, and that means my Rotom's going to be able to move first now. Really cool. Their Pelipper is also pretty much forced to Terra if they want to avoid the Discharge, or they have to Wide Guard. Fortunately for them, they do have the Wide Guard. I want to play it safe. I don't want to I don't want to overextend by keeping the Goldingo in, so I go ahead and use Discharge. Bring in the Gastrodon so I can draw away like the Hydro Pump if it has it away from the Rotom Heat, just in case it does Terra. But they do show Wide Guard here. all right, which protects the Gardevoir that hits another turn. Unfortunately, full paralysis kicks in, so a little bit fortunate for me. Now here's the unfortunate part. My opponent goes for Protect. Not sure if if it was just like a rush decision. Again, they were lagging. They had some technical issues on their end, unfortunately. But then the Protect failed because of the Wide Guard initiating the turn before. So I just go ahead. I get to get a free attack, bring the Pelipper down to Sash, and then attack with the Ice Beam. All right. So now we're down to the 3v1, and I get to clean that up quickly just because Gastrodon didn't play. All right. Now we move on to game 2. Now I'm thinking that I can pretty much lead the same Pokemon. While I don't hate the Dragonite Gardevoir lead that they used last time, they haven't shown anything that's like immediately threatening that same lead. Plus, ideally, I do eventually want to get like a Tailwind up, and if I need to, I can always switch to Gastrodon to like absorb a water move, and that lets Rotom fire off a Discharge or a Volt Switch, so I can get position. So I go ahead and go with the same lead. Ryu goes ahead and goes with the same lead as well, but they switch their strategy, and one that I actually kind of respect. Skill swap on the Gardevoir. So like I mentioned with the Tinkaton, I was concerned about the skill swap aiming for the Storm Drain or for the Goodness Gold. I did not consider, however, skill swapping the Levitate off of Rotom so that it could be affected by the Earthquake. So I just want to put some respect into that strategy if I can. I don't really sniff it out. I think that's kind of evident by the fact that I switched into Goldingo. I think the fortunate part, however, is it looks like they invested more into bulk rather than offense. So I'm still have like a fair amount of health left. I get to reserve my Goldingo. They switch out from here, allowing me to set up a free Tailwind. So that's also fortunate for me. So I've got a really great position. I've got speed control, and a little bit importantly, I find out a little bit. I find out a little bit about Floatzel's moveset in the event that I have to go into a game 3. The fact that it did not get KO'd by Life Orb, Draco Meteor from the Noivern. I did the calcs earlier. This is coming from Timid, going into the Floatzel. There is at least a little bit of defensive investment going into this, because otherwise the Draco Meteor kills. Unless I've done the calculations wrong or something's wrong with my browser, that Draco Meteor should have killed. However, it leaves it on 10%, letting me know that there is some bulk investment into this Floatzel. That either means it's not hitting as hard or it's not running as fast. I have no way to really tell yet, but we get a pretty good chunk of damage into it. We also get a Thunderbolt bringing the Pelipper down to Sash, and then the Pelipper takes out my Noivern, but it gets knocked out by its own Life Orb as a result. So now I'm still in a good position, right? They bring back in their Dragonite, which is still kind of a concern for me. However, we both have Tailwind up, which means I have the speed advantage. I'm running, once again, max speed, timid nature on my Goldingo. So I'm going to be naturally faster than the Dragonite, right? Now at this point, I don't mind spamming Ice Beam into the Dragonite slot. I think I was a little bit too afraid to go ahead and toss out Make It Rain, because I'm still not sure what Terra the Dragonite has, or when it's going to Terra. So I decided to play it safe. I go for a Protect on the Goldingo. If I had thrown out a Make It Rain, I would have been able to get 2 knockouts right here. Yeah, this is just the safe play in my opinion. Do a bunch of damage to the Dragonite, find out it has weakness policy, which may be why it has so much bulk. And if you recall earlier, I made a last minute change before the matches started, where I put Rindo Berry on the Gastrodon, and here it comes in clutch. I'm really glad that played out the way that I wanted to. So I get a free Make It Rain and knock out the Dragonite. My Gastrodon is reserved to go ahead and get some damage onto Gardevoir. Now, like, regardless of if that Rindo Berry came through, I think I was still in like a really good position to go ahead and close out the game. All they have left is a low health Pelipper. but that kind of saves me, some concern in case there's just like some tricky thing that the Gardevoir is doing at the end of the game that I was just like not aware of. Okay. Yeah. All that being said, I think my planning came out pretty solid for this matchup. I had a number of concerns, a number of them of which were actually brought to the match, but we were able to find like an early position. I think having discharge on Choice Specs Rotom actually helped quite a bit to secure that position, and then getting the tailwind up on game 2 helped ensure that for me as well in the end game there. So we picked up the dub 2-0. Pretty glad for that result, just having a strong lead into the season. But yeah, we'll do some more planning. Once again, we're doing this week by week. We have another matchup coming up later on. We'll get that scheduled out, and I'll do the same thing. I'll do a breakdown of how I'm approaching the team building, and then I'll do commentary over the matches. Whether that's going to be live or whether I go over the replays is yet to be determined, but we'll get there when we get there. Either way, if you tuned in, I appreciate you for watching. Definitely leave any comments and insight down below. Leave a like. I always appreciate that. But yeah, I definitely appreciate you watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.